Hey guys, I'm Chris,
And I'm Mike.
and welcome back to this week's No Limits, the Mid-Trap podcast. What's new this week, Mike?
Chris, was that not the most enjoyable hour we have had in a very long time talking to Kyle Mills?
Yeah, brought a tear to my eye at the end, It
It
was
did.
a little sad. I think we send him off pretty well.
Yeah.
It's bittersweet, but I know that, he left us with a banger, and we have a whole year to speculate, look forward to the next chapter. And I think we should just, bask in the glory of this final installment of Kyle Mills. So
You're right. It's a banger. And speculation will be had on this podcast. You betcha. There will be plenty of that. But Kyle left us with a real gem in Code Red. Honestly, after doing part one last week, and I think I stand by, I had some quibbles with the start to this book. The way this book builds, oh my goodness. And I am not one to jump to conclusions and say every new book that comes out in a series is automatically my favorite or the best one that person ever put out. We don't say that, to get ambassador points and, to get some internet hits. And rarely do I say that, Total Power, I definitely didn't, a couple others.
yeah,
But the second half of Code Red might be my favorite thing written by Kyle Mills in this series. I just wish so badly it was the whole book, instead of just 75% of it, because that second half is a banger. And when we record part two, I'm going to be out of my mind with praise for this book.
yeah. No, and it's like we said, it's kind of like this one-off. And he even said it today in the interview. He didn't, and it kind of makes sense the way he put it. Like at first I was thinking, oh, he's just gonna mail it in, not mail it in, because I know Kyle would never mail it in, but just like, all right, I'm gonna leave you with this. But in a sense, it perfectly makes sense, right? Where we don't want to go. He can't have, like, he's like a spoiler for our own podcast. Like, he can't have Mitch lose a leg in the last chapter and leave, heaven forbid, have Mitch die or Irene die, whatever. But I think it was a well thought out, well executed side quest, standalone novel. Yeah, and I think he's been very gracious with his time and didn't disappoint in this interview today.
Yeah. So give us a hashtag PegLegMitch if you.
Exactly, and people listen to the podcast, you'll understand it. So
Yeah, that was a good one when he said that. But you're right, he was generous. I mean, guys, he joined us 10:30 p.m. at night until 10:30 p.m.
well, he was in Phoenix, so
He's in Phoenix. Sure. It's late for us, but he had just flown from Spain. He's getting ready for a 3-day book tour. He'll be traveling, every day. It was 115 degrees, he said. Phoenix was setting records. So,
right.
yeah, we didn't want to keep him on too long, but he spent the whole hour and I think he had a good time. I think we had a good time. He had a good time. I think he also appreciated talking spoilers. I've heard a few of his interviews, and they've all been great, but it's kind of like itching to just get into, the meat and potatoes of it all. And we really got to do that with him tonight.
Yeah, no, like we like to do that. It's fun. It's more fun to do that than just give me like, so tell me why you wrote this book, or like what inspiration you had. Like,
Yeah.
no, come on. I want to understand why you did this. Like why you did specifically that. Or like, why did this character act this way?
Yeah.
Or is that Marcus or not? Like
We got
that
an
kind of
answer.
stuff.
I
That kind of
gotta
stuff.
say,
It's not.
I wasn't totally satisfied, but you were right. I concede. You
Yeah.
were correct. You were correct. I got a little too excited there. Yeah, we get answers to those things. And I mean, let's just put this one out there. Spoiler warning. Ben Friedman. We get
Right.
Dude, we got Ben Friedman in a Mitrap book. To me, that is, and to do it so well and integrate it into the story as seamlessly as he did. And I meant to tell him this. We were talking a little bit about how Flynnian this book is. I'm glad you brought that up and told him we definitely saw, like in The Survivor, how concerted his effort was to respect Vince. And it's
He went back
almost
to that for sure.
right. And it's almost just happening naturally here that he has that skill.
Right.
It's in his wheelhouse. And I saw that with Ben Friedman because Ben Friedman's the weasel. And he weaseled Mitch. Even Irene even thought she could trust Mossad and the Israelis and Ben. And you know, when that happens, you've got a real weasel. And that is something he would have done 15 years ago, to
Sure.
Mitch. And he's still doing it right here. So to be able to pull that off is just impressive.
Yeah. No, definitely. Definitely.
Well, guys, if you're liking what you're hearing, we appreciate you. And we even got 3 people hitting us up with some real positive news. Did you see here, Chris, what Dave Evans wrote on our Facebook?
No, I didn't see this.
A Vince Flynn podcast. Why the hell am I only just finding out about this? I'll be all over this. Well, thank
Where
you,
the
Dave.
hell have you been? Where have you been, Dave?
Come on, Dave.
Welcome
It's
to
been
the
120 episodes, bro.
welcome to the pod. Go subscribe to all 3 seasons.
Yes.
We've now branched out a little bit. Yeah, but welcome. Always excited to have new fans.
And people are happy we branched out with No Limits, the Thriller podcast, because listen to what Sam said in an email. Thank you, Sam S. I just found the No Limits podcast. I am super pumped to start burning through the episodes. I have been a Rap, Harvath, and now James Reese follower for years. This is exactly the podcast I have been looking for. Thank you for all of the content.
Oh, well, we like bringing you new, fresh content almost weekly. So.
Almost weekly, we do. And so thank you. It's comments like that keep us going. And not just comments like that, our patrons keep us going.
Yes. So welcome. We have a new patron, Rick W.
Yes, thank you, Rick _WS. Tried to reach out to you. Hopefully we'll hear from you soon. Don't know if that's just your handle or your real name, but Rick WS, glad to have you. And we hope you are able to take advantage of a lot of the patron perks, such as our group chat. Welcome, yes. Matt P. and Kevin B. You guys have been around from the start, but now we get to talk to you regularly on the group chat.
I get to now, I say those names at the end of every podcast. Now I actually get to talk about Matt P. and Kevin B.
Yeah, we text them now.
Yeah. And
in this episode, I mention a big theory, and that was Matt P.'s theory that he hit me up with. I told Kyle had an interesting reaction to it. So listen to the full interview to hear what Matt's really, really, really good theory is about the George Goodell, Steven Weber audio switch.
And for the less than the price of a novel a month, you too can support us on this podcast and be the reason that we're able to sit here today, talk to Kyle, have fun. Like we literally have fun because of you guys, and we love bringing this stuff every month. So go to thrillerpod.com, click on that Patreon tab to learn more. So now, enjoy this not final interview with Kyle, but final interview with Kyle talking Mitch Rapp.
Today, we welcome back to the Mitch Rapp podcast, the man who added 3,440 pages to our favorite series, the Mitch Rapp universe. Kyle Mills, thanks for those 3,000 plus pages.
Wow.
Welcome back.
That sounds like a lot when you say it that way.
I couldn't get the word count, or else I would have had that prepared for you, but that would have taken a little extra digging.
Jeez, yeah. It's probably 1 million.
How you doing, Kyle? What's new?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm doing good. Let's see. I think got Code Red in the bag, and now going out on tour, and comes out day after tomorrow, I guess. So yeah, exciting. Kind of exciting. The last one. It's a little bittersweet, but turning it over to Don, and kind of anxious to be a fan again.
How did that feel? Writing that last page and sending it in, or are you still waiting for the last book tour event and then you'll really feel like this thing has come to a close?
Yeah, I don't know. It was weird. It's kind of weird because you get up and I spent the last decade of my life getting up and thinking, well, what's Mitch Rapp doing today? And I get up and realize I don't have to think about that. So, it's kind of like losing the friend you hang out with all the time. And
right.
So a little bit weird. Yeah. There are so many different end points. When I finished the tour, I had to cut up the company credit card. Maybe that'll feel like the end.
That'll feel like the end.
I'm not sure. But yeah, at that point, it's kind of done, right? I don't have no more real publicity, no more stuff. It's kind of over. And so it feels weird.
Yeah, we haven't had a chance to talk to you since the big announcement, and we definitely want to get into this book because it's amazing. But I don't know if you can touch on like what made you decide this was the time, or like why you think that this is your time to move on.
Yeah, I mean, it was a few factors. Just I had this book and this character named Fade that I've been thinking about for like a decade, and well, probably certainly longer than that, but thinking about it kind of harder for a decade, that I've been wanting to bring back, and I think he's got some interesting stories to tell. And I'm just not one of these. Guys that can write 2 books a year. I mean, so many people are doing that now, and I it was kind of one or the other. And it's just something that I'm not as young as I used to be that I really wanted to dig into before I got too far down the line. And um, I think maybe it was time for a fresh perspective on Mitch too. It's an interesting thing because the last book I wrote, a lot of people thought was the end of the series because of the way it ended. And I had to tell them, no, no, no. I have another book, but I almost thought maybe that was what first started prompting, is it almost felt like my era was over a little
Mm.
bit with the end of that book, and I had one more to do, which I did as kind of a standalone. And maybe that got me to thinking it was time to pursue Fade again.
Okay. All right. Well, we definitely want to get into Fade at the end, but I guess let's first talk Code Red here, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even before that, though, just to follow up there, Kyle, it's interesting because those feelings where you were feeling that you had more stories to tell in your other characters, and you were kind of feeling things coming to a close. Did that coincide with the struggles of Enemy at the Gates and Oath of Loyalty? Because we know those books were a little too close to home and required a lot of rewrites, and the changes with the January 6th events. I don't know why, but I had this sense that there was some friction, and I don't mean that in a negative sense, but just the idea of grinding through a book and creating a series and not having the complete freedom of it being your own, because you've got the Vince Flynn, backdrop and stakeholders and all the baggage that this fandom comes with. Would you say those two feelings coincided, the ones you personally felt and the struggles of kind of doing those rewrites and edits?
I think that wasn't too much of a struggle. I mean, those are the kinds of things that happen as a thriller writer if you're trying to like do really work with what's in the headlines. It's not the first time that's happened to me, for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think to some extent that was prompted by the fact that I think there was still a good story to tell there, but it wasn't right for the Mitrap universe. And that's why I made those changes. If that had been those have been Fade books, or any other character that I had written, I probably wouldn't have made as many changes. Because you do have, I mean, there is a responsibility that you write Mitch Rapp books. Maybe I shouldn't even say Mitch Rapp books, because that's a book that Mitch Rapp's in, but Vince Flynn books, that, you stay true to what made those books great to the degree you can, even though the world's very different. So there are things that I want to explore and that are happening in the world today that are very different than, terrorism and a lot of the things that this series was focused on, that I think would have been hard to tell through Mitch's eyes. And I think I've told you guys before that was true even with the Cook arc, that I was going to leave the franchise because that's an arc I wanted to write, but I didn't think it was right for the series. And Vince's agent disagreed, and he said, no, I think that would be great. I think that would be a really interesting story to tell. The fact that it got messed up, by history certainly wasn't his fault.
Right.
So
Yeah.
A real insurrection against an autocrat, maybe.
Yeah, it just, so having a little bit more of a free hand to explore some of the weird, because the world's getting weird. It's not the Soviets anymore. It's not the, Islamic terrorism anymore. There's just a lot of weird, complex, sometimes self-destructive impulses. I didn't feel like that was something that would stay true to the franchise. And I didn't want to make like really radical, even if they were done slowly, which maybe is the opposite of radical, but to really change that series and the way it feels. I think they probably would have agreed if I'd wanted to do it, but I felt like it was better if somebody else took it over.
Okay. Well, this book to me, Code Red, I don't know if it's just because you're so in tune with, but it felt very Flynnian to me, and
Yep.
and there were some stretches like I can even point like chapter 22. Mike even texted me chapter 22 to like 27. I honestly think is some of your best writing ever, and is it just because you're so comfortable with the series now? It's just becoming naturally that you can like channel your, both, but also bring your inner self to it, like, but also have Vince like be there in the words.
Well, I wanted this to feel a little old school. I wanted to do a standalone because I didn't want the next writer. I didn't know it was going to be Don at that point to kind of end up in the same position I was, where
Right. You had to
you
follow up.
had this arc that had been half finished. And you had to try to pick it up, and I wanted them to have like a platform that they could go anywhere they wanted with the series. So I included, so I did it kind of as a standalone. I did it a little old school. Mitch is back in the Middle East doing what he does best, kicking ass, taking names. There's background in the book. So if the author didn't know the series that well, where he lived. He all of the main characters kind of are in the book, so you could build all on the relationships that they have would be really clear. And that's kind of where I was going with this book. I just wanted to make it a really fun and exciting book that didn't, and I no longer have, I kind of have the luxury to do that because I no longer had to think about where
Right.
the series
The
was going
next
to
step.
go.
Yeah.
And, but as far as it like being easy and challenging, no, I think it's probably the second hardest book in the series after The Survivor that
Okay.
I ever wrote. So I really kind of sweat blood over this book, honestly.
Well, it comes out in greatness, I think.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
It's a lot of hard work. My wife was really happy when it was done.
I bet. I bet.
This book just took us home. Everything that is homely and comforting of the Mitrap universe, when we, as the fans, crack open these books, everything was here. I mean, I felt like I was an American assassin in the streets of Beirut. It could have been what Vince did there. It could have been third option, real early Vince, his second book in the series, crossing borders and trying to hide and disguise yourself. He even rides bikes, right, in a Peloton across the border to try to disguise himself. And he's got Matthew Fournier here. Even it had elements of Spy Comes In From the Cold. I mean, just Le Carré, when he's crossing that border into Israel and he's watching his back.
Yeah.
It's not just Vince. You're pulling on so many strings in this book of legends, titans in the Thrillerverse. It's incredible what you've gotten to in the series.
Yeah, thank you. It's really it was fun. Yeah, I think it was fun in the end. When it turned out to be something that I was really happy with. But there were some dark days in there that I wasn't sure if it was where it was going. But those sometimes that makes for the best books because it's the ones that you have to really think about. Why are you doing what you're doing and really hone them? And I think part of it was emotional that I wanted to end on a strong note because I never wanted to give anybody reason to say that, I had phoned this last one in. I knew I was leaving and I wanted to move on to what I was going to do. And I, churn something out in a month or something, because that was definitely not the case.
That does not come through. And this is interesting. I'll peel back the curtain a little bit on what I went through with this book, because I wasn't sure at first. I'll be honest. I was wondering how you would pull off a standalone that doesn't completely screw over Don, and leave him with just a mess. So I'm like, I know in some sense this is going to have to be a bit of a standalone, a side quest. I'm not always a big fan of those. And so when you're setting up the Captagon and the Salerno op and a couple of things, I'm like, okay, it's definitely going to be that level of side quest. But Kyle, listen to this text. When I finished the book, and Chris, this was maybe like an hour ago, I saved it because I wanted to be fresh here. So I let this book stare me down for a couple of weeks so I could finish it right now. About an hour ago, I texted Chris, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I just finished that book with the biggest smile on my face. That feeling when you walk out of a movie theater you had no expectations for, and it blew you away.
Oh, well, thank you.
It undermined every question or anxious nervousness that I felt going into the book. By the time it was done, I was smiling, and it was incredible.
That's great. I really appreciate that because that's the way I want to leave it. That everybody had a great time with my era, that I went out with a bang, and that Don has a nice platform and he can kind of take it wherever he wants to.
Oh, that's nice.
I wish I had more time as a writer though, because when I found out it was Don, it would have been really funny to like change the ending and really screw him and then send him that version.
Yes.
And then Mitch Rott lost a leg.
Yeah, exactly. And he has to deal with that. That would have been hilarious. And then he has to start writing the book, but you don't tell him. Like similar to Mike, like we got this book, David sent it when he first could, and I wanted to read it because it's a Mitch Rapp novel. It's like I'm used to these like comfort blankets during the summer, getting these and getting my Scott Harvath novel from Brad. But I couldn't bring myself to do it because I knew this was going to be my last time reading, you, and obviously I'm not done reading you. We're digging into all your old stuff first and getting ready for your next chapter. But yeah, just for something I didn't want to pick it up yet because I wanted to savor it, and then obviously I did. But speaking of like, you mentioned that you had this itch for fate, obviously, in characters. I kind of was thinking the same thing with. Did you have this itch to bring back Damian Losa and like that was one of the characters I really liked from
Lethal Agent,
one of my other favorite books, Lethal Agent. Really intrigued how you developed upon him in this one.
Yeah, I like that character. I like villains,
Yeah.
so I've always loved them. I've always liked them better than heroes. So he has an interesting backstory and is an interesting guy. A little bit the foil, sort of the dark sort of reflection of Irene Kennedy.
Right.
And so it was kind of fun to have Mitch working for basically the dark Irene Kennedy, and I think he says it in there a little bit. What would it be like if she was unbounded by any morals?
Claudia warns him. Claudia tells him that.
Oh, that's right. Claudia tells him that. And like, what would it be like if she decided to be, a huge criminal mastermind? And so in the end, it's a little bit same, but different. He's still working for somebody very much like he's used to, but, unbound by any kind of loyalty or sense of right or wrong. So I think it was an interesting mix. And to get Mitch a little bit out of his comfort zone, to take his backup away from him for most of it, and have him be just completely on his own.
Right.
I thought in Syria, which is an interesting setting, I thought would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we haven't gone there yet, right? So
no, not really. I mean, there hasn't been, the United States historically it's not really been our sphere of influence too much. So it doesn't get quite as much play as some other places in thrillers. And it's such an interesting, kind of post-war setting, the poverty and everything. It's
right.
a really interesting thing to write about.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Chris mentioned Brad Thor earlier. I mean, Deadfall was an absolute knockout of a book, and coming out so recently, it's like, wow, that's in Ukraine. You felt like you're on the ground. You're meeting the locals. You're seeing all the villages and towns and how they're bombed out. And I was like, this is some of the best, settings in any thriller book I've ever read. Then I get to Code Red, and you do that again with Syria. And it's like I just got a 1-2 punch of these villages, the bombed out buildings, even the cafe scene. Talking about throwbacks, Lethal Agent, one of my other favorite things besides the Damian Losa, Carlo Esparza drug cartel stuff, was the cafe scene. When Mitch is like this apparition that comes in from the desert and he's in the cafe. And here you give us another restaurant scene. I was just digging it. And then the locals. Did you have fun writing the museum director? Love that guy. How he has no business being caught up in the war. The kid on the dirt bike, the uncle who was a victim of the Russians' nonsense. Did you have fun getting into the Syrian locals and setting?
I did, because, all those people have been so touched by that war. And, what would you like, the museum directors and stuff, like, what would you do to survive in that situation? So you have all these people that wouldn't be criminals or wouldn't be terrorists or insurgents or any of these things in their normal lives. They're school teachers or archaeologists or whatever that have all gotten drawn into this. So it did create a really kind of rich group of people that are fish out of water. And the fish out of water story is always a good one.
Another thing I wanted to bring up was the callbacks. Like you kind of mentioned it before, like having this be a throwback to a little bit to the early days. But we get Ben Friedman in this novel.
Oh
like,
my God.
when I'm reading that, I just chuckled when I heard his name.
Well, yeah, it was funny though, because when I first did that, I thought, man, Ben Friedman's not dead, is he?
He's
And
around.
I
It's funny
couldn't
that you go
remember.
through these things as an author, like, wait, who can I actually use?
Yep.
Yeah, because I couldn't, I didn't remember him ever dying.
Right.
But I had to go through every book. I had to search every book for his name to make sure that he had
Just to make sure. Yeah.
That's what we do when we podcast, pretty much.
Yeah,
You can
what's
go on
nice.
Kindle and just search it, right?
Yeah, which is a great thing to be able to do, particularly when you have a 22 book universe. You forget little things like that. How embarrassing would that be? Somebody emailed me like, Ben Friedman died in, Memorial Day or whatever. Oh, whoops.
I guess that's why George R.R. Martin is not giving us the next novel. So
Could be.
Well, Ben just got kneecapped, and I believe when that happened, Irene says something like, he may be useful yet. She didn't want Rap to kill him. Like, she was
Right.
like, I'm surprised you didn't kill him in the Situation Room where he did it. And I think Irene says, we actually want him back in Israel. We want him in Mossad. And the payoff of that 10, 12, whatever many books later is just, it's fascinating.
It'll be interesting to see how many readers like put that together or think that's just a character that I came up with. Because
Right.
it goes way back.
yeah, it's far back.
I think
So.
most would get it. I mean, assuming they read the Vince Flynn books, he
Are
was memorable.
Are most readers
Yeah.
like us though, Mike?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. We have a bit
Yeah, I mean it's
skewed
it's
perspective.
hard. Yeah, it's hard.
Oh,
to
hold on though. Chris and I, we recorded our part 1 review of the book when we were halfway done. And one of our biggest debates in episode 1,
Oh yeah.
I nearly fell out of my chair. You got to tell us, please, did you intend the video gamer on the phone with Scott to be Marcus Demond
Or is it some
or
random
not?
person?
Or are we not supposed to know? He's got a poker face.
No. I didn't intend that at all.
No, okay.
Because this guy was a lock picking expert.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was trying to argue that to Mike.
Yeah,
he,
no,
he was
so-
convinced it was Marcus. So.
I argued
No,
he can
no,
look
no,
up
no,
the
no.
schematics. He can find the schematics and hack a database.
Yeah, but lock picking is really different. Like it's a mechanical. You have to know how all the locks work, what kind of cores they have, the quirks of a certain type. He's totally based on a guy on the internet named the Lock Picking Lawyer.
Huh.
Oh, okay.
There's a guy I don't know if you've ever watched it, but for some reason his videos, he's got like million views on every one. And all he
Of course
does
he
is
does.
just his hands. And he's like, tells
Show
you how
people
to pick
locks.
locks. Yeah. Like
Wow.
he can pick like just any lock in the world. He can pick in like 10 seconds. And so that comes directly from one of his videos. That's where he was doing that particular master lock and exactly how you would do it if he had to give you instructions. So that's
We got an answer. At least we got an answer.
Yeah.
These are little things, the little nuances that go into writing novels that I love. That's why I love talking to authors.
Well, that's why it's fun, because I obviously when you write these books, you hopefully have a really broad series of interests.
Mhm.
And I never really thought about. I like watch those lock picking things and videos every once in a while, and I never really thought that would be part of a book. But then
You had a
he had
situation.
to open this lock, and like he's not a lock picking expert, so what would you do? You'd call one and he'd tell you how to do it.
You know what my guilty pleasure is there? There's a couple of YouTube channels that hack the hackers. They scam the scammers. And those
I've
guys are
seen those.
hysterical.
Those things are really
Hysterical.
funny. Yeah.
This one guy
Yeah.
turned on the webcam of like a call center in Mumbai or something. And he's like telling all the people what they're wearing in this office while they're scamming people.
That's funny.
That could go in a thriller.
That could go into thriller, yeah.
Oh man, we got our answer on Marcus. So now we'll have to bother Don to find out where Marcus is and what he's been up to.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're off the hook from our Marcus Demond questions here. So.
I am off. Yeah. Well, I'm off the hook on everything.
Yeah. So we wanted to ask you, we're typically audiobook readers, just because of our busy lives. And for this one, we have a change of the audiobook reader from George to Stephen Weber. We got that very nice letter from George explaining, a little bit about that. I wanted to know if you could comment just a little bit about, Stephen Weber, what, parting from George, anything?
Yeah, I think Steven sounds great. And, I understand why George, didn't want to do it. He'd been doing it forever. And I can definitely understand why he wanted to move on and maybe didn't think he was the right person to do it anymore. But I think it's interesting. I feel bad for the audio readers because I think that's a harder job than what I have. Because no matter how good they do, it's a different voice.
Sure.
So hopefully, I actually have readers have been much better about this than I thought, because the first time George didn't do one, man, I got a ton of hate mail.
That was when
Like
Scott Brick did one of your
Scott
novels,
Brick.
right?
Yeah. And like
And
when
I like Scott Brick. I like Scott Brick too.
but I was like, I did it. And I'm like, I didn't do it. George didn't want to do it. Like, what do you want me to do? Go like put a gun to his head? And so I thought that was going to happen again, and it hasn't so much. Like,
Okay,
I think,
good to hear.
yeah, I think that, eventually stuff changes, and
Yeah.
you got to roll with it a little bit.
Yeah, everything must come to a change, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, eventually. I mean,
You want to hear a theory?
Series has been going on forever, right?
It's just a theory we heard from one of our listeners. He direct messaged me, and I was like, oh my God. And Kyle, no need to comment here. Chris, I didn't tell you this. He's wondering, because George said having a younger voice might be more fitting for rap. And he said, do you think that means down the road we're going to get the Kill Shot sequel? Will a younger voice be able to fill in an earlier rap?
I'm the wrong person to ask.
Just a theory, just a conspiracy theory we're putting out there. Thanks to Matt P.
How many times have we asked Kyle about that?
Yeah, we've tried to do it.
Every time we get him on the line.
So a spin on that for you, Kyle, is, and I think I know what your answer may be, but you have said earlier that that's something you might be interested in, a historical fiction concept. We get to see Thomas Stansfield, Stan Hurley, the Ohlmeyer clan, Greta. How do you feel that is something that's not going to be in your on your resume, or do you feel you have any other regrets, things you would have wanted to cover in the series or do that just time is the great destroyer?
I mean, I would have liked to have finished that Kill Shot trilogy. I have to admit. Kill Shot's one of my favorite The Trap novels. So, and it would have been fun to do something historical, but it just wasn't, it wasn't meant to be. I think there were a lot of interesting storylines for Mitch moving it forward. So going back, that far, I don't know. I think it'd have been interesting and fun, but I just didn't get that much traction for it with the publisher. And not that they said no or anything, but it just didn't feel like they were that excited about the idea. So it's not like there wasn't other stuff to write about. So I just never did it. But I have a lot of it in my head. So
maybe one day.
Over a beer with Don, some of those things might slip out.
Yeah. You never know. Maybe I mean, there's a good chance he will do it, because it's certainly something people ask about all the time. So,
little thought partner, the two of you can collab on that.
Yeah, never know.
We can transition a little bit to Fade. We just covered the novel, love it, but you killed the main character at the end.
But that's amazing. I don't know about you, but that ending to me was perfectly fitting.
We will say that, like, in the sense, it's kind of a good follow-up. We're talking about these loose ends. In a sense, you wrote a novel that is complete, and you can now do whatever you want with it.
Yeah, that one, because that was so much about a character, and it was all about that character being doomed.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the ending. The ending was always like the first thing I wrote, pretty much. So I knew that's how it would end. And, that was the end. I mean, I put it away. That was probably one of the most popular books I've ever written. That character is certainly the most popular character I've ever written. So, but people would be like, oh, what really happened? I'm like, no, I don't think about it anymore. He's dead. And then I started thinking about it more. See, so and I started thinking about where he'd come from and all that, and that was interesting. But one day it popped up in my head, like how it could have happened that he did not die.
Oh,
And
okay.
I couldn't come up with anything. It just sort of popped into my head one day. And then I started thinking about that. And I was like, well, if he didn't die, what would he be doing? What would he be, feeling at this point? Where would he go? So, I mean, it's not like he didn't leave things in like very good shape. And he's kind of a extraordinarily wanted man.
Right.
What would he do? Is there any future for him? Because I mean, that's why he did what he did. There was no path forward for him. He knew that. Slowly going paralyzed, wanted, killing a bunch of cops, like it. So, but he's an interesting character, and I want to tell the story about what's going on in the world today and do it from like Mitch Rapp wasn't the right guy because he's always the master of his own universe. And I wanted to do it through kind of a younger person who can maybe get swept up in things and not know if he should be or if it's right, if it's wrong, but he doesn't really have anywhere else to go. That like these are the kind of things that were interesting to me.
Okay.
And after writing about terrorism, writing about Russians and all that, to kind of look forward and what character did I want to use for that? And then again, Fade popped into my head as a guy who's a bit of a pop philosopher. He's a little nihilistic, and I like all these things that you see in people in the modern world. And he just seemed like a good person.
I think his attitude towards life with what he's been through is a perfect vehicle to do that and kind of think outside the box and maybe break some of our preconceived notions when we hear what's going on in the news, because he's got that quirky personality. Almost Chris and I said it would be something like on the spectrum, but it gives him this innate ability to see things more clearly or differently than the most of us who are so hemmed in by the
it's like
social
his
constructs.
advantage. Yeah.
It's his biggest advantage. So I think that's just a really, really fascinating thing to do. So, and you don't have to tell us this. So we're going back.
No,
Future Fade books may be a flashback or
no.
not
I
necessarily.
want to go forward.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to go forward. I mean, I thought about going back, but I've spent a lot of time writing about that. Like, if you think of Fade again, he would, in a way, he might echo Mitch Rapp a little too much. If you went back, Fade clearly would be a specialist and was played as a specialist fighting terrorism.
Right.
That was the time he was around. He's actually Arab. Not Arab, but he's Arab American. So his real name's Salam Al-Fayed.
Right.
So clearly that would be his specialty. He's, a native level Arabic speaker because of his family, etc. And that's just not like I've spent the last decade exploring that. I think at the time it was what was happening in the world and in the newspapers, but it's not really so much anymore. And you just have weird stuff going on now. It's self-destructive and it's China, but they're really schizophrenic, and you've got Russia's self-destructive. America's becoming a little self-destructive. And those are the things that I wanted to explore. And Mitch Rapp, in fact, I think in this book, Mitch Rapp says he doesn't even want to get, into that complicated self-inflicted damage kind of stuff. He's the guy who protects us from external forces. And so
he even says the Russians don't even know what they want, right?
Yeah, and you've got the rise of a ruling class that's becoming more and more powerful. That is another thing that's interesting happening in the world. You think, if NASA needs to get somebody, an astronaut into space, they have to go beg into Elon Musk and hope, they catch him before he's done too many bong hits. It's kind of weird, we talk about a transition to electric cars. Once again, You got Elon Musk sitting there going, "Oh, do you need to charge your car? I wonder who controls that entire system. Could it be me?"
And his internet with
Yeah,
Starlink.
exactly. The Defense Department has to go begging,
the
you know, for
Ukrainians.
the
He's
Ukrainians because he controls it. And
yeah,
the guy's
which is
basically see
very
pictures of him and he's
strange.
sitting there like Dr. Evil, right?
Right.
That's why Nicholas Ward was incredible.
Yeah,
Love Nicholas Ward.
exactly. And so I want to have a character somewhat like that, but maybe a group of characters like that. Because you think of, you know, Elon Musk and all
Tim
his
Cook.
friends kind of got together into a little cabal.
Anthony Cook too, yeah.
I mean, you could rule a lot of the world. I mean, think about just the defense contractors. What we're finding out now that in conventional war, it's not about the weapons, it's about the ammunition. You run out of it.
Right.
Well, the US military doesn't make ammunition.
Someone's got to manufacture it, yeah.
That's a private industry. And they say, well, you want the ammunition? Well, we can probably work that out, but you got to scratch my back. You know, I'd like to have a small island nation, please, or whatever. I mean, so more and more you have individuals and companies and stuff becoming more powerful. So these are all just a lot of, definitely, that's just a broad, you got AI, quantum computers. I mean, driverless cars, like all these things are creating just this tumultuous change. And then running it all or trying to control it all are politicians, all of whom are 80 to 90 years old and can't turn on a phone. So somebody's got to control it. It's not going to be Mitch McConnell and Joe Biden. So it's going to be Elon Musk and Zuckerberg and people like that. So these are the things that I wanted to explore, but I didn't know if Mitch just didn't feel like he wanted to. It told me he didn't want to get involved.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
You know who'd be really interesting going up, let's say, a cabal of those characters in this global elitist would be an Egan, Karen Manning, and Fade group, because it's like you all of a sudden have a ragtag group of a guy who wanted to get in the pants of this cop who was trying to arrest him, and he was trying to kill his best friend, who he didn't know he was his best friend. And now all of a sudden, this is what we're left with to stand up against it.
Exactly. And, you know, and then are the elitists necessarily all bad? You know,
right?
Like that's the other question. You know, I mean, Jeff Bezos, maybe he's evil, but I always get my stuff on time.
And Nicholas Ward,
and it's so cheap.
Irene trusted him, and he wanted to help Irene. He was one of the good guys, even though he wielded this immense power.
Yeah, and I mean, I live in a really wealthy town, and I know a lot of people who have, you know, a gazillion dollars, and no, they're not all bad people. You know, some of them really do want to help and work things out, but it's a harder question: is how?
Right.
Yeah.
And then does that power twist you? And, you know, again, these are super interesting ideas. I don't know that anybody necessarily goes into things to be evil, but then, I mean, Google, a perfect example of a company that's motto used to be "Don't be evil," and I think they took it off the front of their building. You know, so
did they replace it with a big G that the city then wants them to take down?
I feel like it's like "Be evil," you know. So all things that are interesting to explore, but again, you know, not to belabor the point, but not from necessarily Mitch Rapp's point of view. You know, I didn't want to write a Kyle Mills book and then wedge Mitch Rapp into it. I don't think that'd be fair to fans.
Sure.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, what we want in the Mitch Rapp books, we got here. And it's all thanks to you, because the Mitch, Anna, and Claudia moments, and the way you chose in that epilogue to end with Anna getting the bike out of the trunk is just that is what makes the Mitch Rapp series special, thanks to your stamp on it. It's a gift that you have given us, just an absolute gift.
Thank
and
you.
It ended with Anna getting a gift of the bike that's been talked up for 2 books now.
Finally gets the bike. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think Mitch has gotten much, you know, you've got to have that arc, you know, that character arc to make a series interesting. But after a really long series, it's hard to, particularly when you're not aging the character, you know, it's hard to keep that arc going. And I think that those two have really helped me keep Mitch growing without making him, you know, a crotchety old man.
turning it into the next Dan Hurley.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, well,
right.
exactly. And that you could see that happening.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Mitch was always afraid of that, if you
Right.
remember.
You
Yeah,
even
he
dropped
was.
Rory Nash and Shannon Nash into this one, so the Nash kids door is also open. I'm just putting that out there.
You left
Yep.
a lot of nice
Sprinkles.
meat is sprinkles that Don can pull from if he so chooses. So
Yep.
I think there's a lot of places to take that, a lot of great characters and everything. So
Another one of our jokes in the first half, Chris, we were joking that Anna's still going to be 7 in this book and in future books. And then you give us the second grade quote. Did you see that, Chris? Anna's going into second grade, so she really is still 7.
Oh, I know. It's driving me nuts. That's probably what ended up driving me out of the series, really,
We love it, though,
The
at this
fact
point.
that she is so obviously not aging. When you're 44 and you don't turn 45, it's not that noticeable for
sure.
Mitch, but
Right.
when you're perpetually 7.
But she's like aged. You've aged her, but not actually
Like
aged her.
not actually age her. Yeah, and so
She plateaued at 7.
yeah, but it's just weird now because like if you start aging her, she'll eventually be older than Mitch.
Right.
And so yeah, there's the like whatever chicken leg sewn into the pillow of Dawn. That's Anna.
Yep. You left a sword of Damocles hanging above him there.
He's gonna have to figure that one out.
Well, Kyle, I already told you this book was a gift. Everything you've done in the series is a gift. And we don't want to ambush you here late on a Sunday night, and you got the tour ahead of you. But if you just give us
you're gonna ambush
a few minutes, a couple of your biggest fans wanted to thank you. We asked them to be really quick, but they wanted to tell you how meaningful everything you've provided for basically a decade has done for all of us. So if you could, just a few moments to hear from some of your biggest fans.
I'm going to blush.
Hey guys, we got Kyle here. He's got a big tour ahead of him, but we really want you guys to have a chance to tell him everything that this series has meant. So welcome, Chris, Mark, Don, and Daryl. You're super fans, Kyle.
Hey, how are y'all?
Awesome.
So excited.
Yeah, well, God, thanks for sticking with me for all these years.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks for writing good stuff.
Well, it's been my pleasure.
Daryl, did you want to kick it off?
Absolutely. Kyle, I just wanted to express my heartfelt gratitude for keeping Mitch Rapp alive and badass over the last almost decade. Your dedication to continuing Vince's legacy has been nothing short of remarkable, and your storytelling prowess, your massive action, your character development have provided endless hours in suspense and entertainment for us guys.
Well, thanks. It's been a real pleasure. I mean, I was a huge fan before I took over the series, and I'm kind of looking forward to being a fan again.
Yeah,
Chris?
I think Daryl said it. That's it. I'm going to go with that.
Well, thank you.
I'm looking forward to seeing you Tuesday.
Oh, are you coming on Tuesday?
Yep.
Great.
I'll see you there.
I'll look forward to it.
Mark?
Thank you, Kyle. You took one of my favorite characters in Scott Coleman, and you really made him a bigger part of the series. It was just, I couldn't picture a better writer doing that. And Lethal Agent is one of my favorite thrillers of all time. I just want to thank you for that.
Thanks. It's funny. Yeah, people ask me, what's your second favorite character right after Mitch? And everybody thinks, everybody has a preconceived notion of who I'm going to say. And I always say that it's Scott, because he's become like a bigger part of the series, and he's really gained his own personality and stuff. And his interactions with Mitch are always really fun to write. So I'm glad you picked up on that, because I think he's really fun to hang out with.
Absolutely.
Don, you want to jump in?
I do. And I'm not going to video because I have 3 dogs that are trying to get on my head. I think everybody knows, and I'm not sure, I think I told you, but Red War brought me back to reading. When I was growing up, all I wanted to do was read about horses or dogs. I could not find anything I was interested in. And then I just quit reading for a while. And it was after you wrote Red War, I found not a hardback, just a paperback in Barnes and Noble when I took my mom shopping, and I thought, oh, that sounds familiar, American Assassin writer, and then I saw that Vince had passed, and I started getting into all these books, and oh my gosh, he's passed. And then I realized that it wasn't you that passed, that Vince had passed, which, whatever, I'm rambling, but I love it. I love action. I love the characters. Mitch and Scott are my favorite of all of them. I love how you make me laugh, as well as the great action that you write. There's several people that I have been reading, but I always come back to you. And I'm sure a lot of it has to do with both your writing and the characters. But if you weren't there, I wouldn't be engaged as I am. So thank you.
Well, that's so nice. It's great to hear because I love reading. I think there's nothing quite like it. I like movies and stuff too, but there's nothing like reading. So to hear that I helped bring somebody back to it, it's really great. Thank you.
Great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I want to just say, thank you, Kyle, for giving us solace through in the pandemic, because it's because of your, Lethal Agent and Total Power that we started this podcast. And so it's very bittersweet that we're turning this over, but look forward for new things ahead, new things from you, as well as new things from this series. And yeah, I mean, if it weren't for you keep writing these books, we wouldn't be on this podcast right now. So that's for sure.
Well, I'm glad you guys had fun with it and got inspired to do the podcast, because it's really fun it's always fun to listen to these things. And now that you're branching out and doing other books and stuff, it's kind of fun to hear you talk about other authors too.
It's honestly my favorite part of the week. My wife says sometimes I come home, I'm like, oh, I got a podcast, and then she'll hear me talking to Mike through the mic and through the door, and she's like, you sound the most happy. Some of the times the most happy when I'm talking to Mike. I've had a bad day at work, whatever. But then this podcast brightens my day, so yeah. It's because of you. So,
well, thanks. I'm glad.
Kyle, we'll let you go get started on your tour with Don. But one tradition here on No Limits, the Mitch Rep podcast, is we'd like to leave you with a very special limerick. And so here is your farewell limerick. There once was an author named Kyle. For us fans, he went the extra mile, bringing friends from the past. Code Red is a blast. Thank you for all of the smiles. Thank you, Kyle.
Yeah.
Good one. They're always good.
Okay.
Now get some rest, and we'll see you with Don tomorrow night.
All right. Well, thanks. And thanks everybody for reading and for hanging in there with me and giving me a chance.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Kyle.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good night.
All right. Thanks, guys. Hope you enjoyed that interview with Kyle. Always great to chat with him. Always great to chat. He's just such a down to earth guy. I remember the first time David set up the interview with him. I guess we were talking Total Power, right?
Yeah.
And I was super nervous. Because he was our first interview, right? Yeah, you even phrased it with David when he first reached out to us. I mean, we said this on the pod before, so sorry if I'm repeating myself, but you were like, maybe it would be awesome. Maybe we could just chat to Kyle, send him an email or something. And David was like, no, we can make it happen. I think we're like, oh, really?
Yeah.
You want to talk to us?
I think I said to him, we're starting this podcast. We're just two fans. We love talking about the books, long term, pie in the sky. One of our biggest goals here would be to have Kyle on the podcast, to get to talk to him. And David's like, oh, when do you want to do that?
Yeah, so we've had him on for Total Power, Enemy
at the Gates. Oh, we did a Consent to Kill invite. He came to talk Consent to Kill.
We talked Consent to Kill. We did an Oath of Loyalty, and now, so this is his 5th time on the pod.
5th time. That I think that takes the cake of repeat Mitch Rap pod.
I think Ward Larson is up there with 6, maybe.
No. I think Ward's got 3. I think Ward, Andrews, and Wilson have 3 each. Oh, okay, Brian Costello maybe 3 or 4.
All right.
I think Kyle wins with 5, but
Kyle
we'll have to
wins
look
it.
into this.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you guys. Next week or next time you hear from us, we'll be bringing you part 2 of our Code Red. Go check out both those 2 parts. We need to thank our patrons, our special operator Sherry F., our special agents Daryl, Kevin, George, Matt, Dawn, Dennis, Peggy, Catherine, Ray, Bridget, Jeff, and Mark. Awesome seeing all the patrons on the call today. That was really nice.
Loved it.
That was a good idea by you, Mike. Please subscribe, rate, and review using your favorite podcasting platform. You can find us at thrillerpod.com or on Twitter and Insta at thrillerpodcast. And as always, just let Kyle be Kyle, man.